Now, the UK government has released US consultancy firm Bain and Company from a ban on doing business with the state, linked to findings that Bain was involved in state capture here in South Africa. The UK has lifted the 3-year ban less than 8 months after it was imposed. It says Bain and Company has cooperated with its investigation and has provided considerable additional information of its self-cleaning actions. Now, Bain continues to maintain that it made mistakes here in South Africa and it has apologized. But it says there is no evidence that it engaged in any corrupt activity. But Bain remains barred from doing business with the state here in South Africa after 2 commissions, the Nugent Commission of Inquiry and the Zondo Commission of Inquiry, found that it colluded with former President Jacob Zuma and former SARS Commissioner Tom Moyane to capture SARS. Zondo says that was deliberate. To discuss, we're joined by Pan-African Investment and Research Services Chief Economist Dr. Iraj Abedian. We're also joined by Open Secrets Head of Investigations, Michael Marchant. Thank you both. Let me start with you, Iraj. Does Bain deserve to be released?
I think given the conditions in the UK, I'm not surprised because the crime was committed in South Africa. UK, of course, because of Mr. Haynes' efforts, did a very important high-profile condemnation of Bain's activities by banning it in the UK. But from legal point of view, I presume it would have been very difficult for the UK government to maintain that over time. Of course, the disappointing part of it is that whether you like it or not, it's going to be used as a positive publicity for his South African shenanigans in the country at the moment.
Michael, do you agree? And a more fundamental question, given the evidence against Bain, does it deserve the free pass, as it were?
So thanks very much, Francis. I agree that it's not entirely surprising, and I think particularly so just given the UK government's stance at the moment, it's unsurprising that it's bowed to this pressure given that the conduct happened elsewhere. But I would agree that even though it's not entirely surprising, it is deeply disappointing. And I think that the point that you raised in the introduction is the most important one, which is that the UK government is saying that Bain has self-corrected its conduct. But it's hard to imagine how it could have done so when it still refuses to admit that it was part of what the Zondo Commission and Nugent Commissions have called a coordinated and planned systemic attack on the revenue service that happened here over a number of years. Those commissions came to that conclusion on the basis of a range of very serious evidence of Bain's high-level meetings with former President Zuma, Tom Moyane, and others. And yet, as you say, Bain continues to refuse to acknowledge that this is the case. They continue to respond to those commissions of inquiry with a blanket claim that, no, this was not coordinated, we made mistakes and we're sorry. And it's simply not good enough when I think that the evidence is very strong. And the commissions were clear on this, that this was not simply a matter of Bain being caught up in the conduct of others, that they were deeply implicated in that attack on the revenue service.
Iraj, your comment on that, because Zondo found categorically there was collusion and accepted the evidence that a Bain partner wrote the tender that it won at SARS. Bain actually admitted to that. There were meetings between Zuma and Moyane. Zondo saying Bain colluded with Zuma to seize SARS and weaken it deliberately. Surely that is evidence.
Yeah, I think that there's no question that Bain is guilty as hell, and they've caused damage beyond what up to now we have put number on it. The reality is that our government has not done enough, our corporates have not done enough, and we shouldn't really abdicate the responsibility of going after these crooks beyond publicity and tweets, and make sure that not only they pay for the damage, but they must pay reparation for sustained billions of damage that the South African economy has suffered as a result of Bain's alone. I'm not surprised that they deny, and their denial is another confirmation that they are guilty. And the public statement, as you recall, that their current MD has put here really an insult to the injury. So I think there is no lack of evidence. There is no lack of doubt or anything other than the fact that they are guilty, and yet corporate South Africa doing business with them, and South African government has, in my view, really done a symbolic thing, and that is just not good. So if where the crime has happened, this is how they get treated with velvet glove, we can't expect UK and US and other countries do what we should be doing. And to me, that's where we should focus on.
Well, Michael, Lord Peter Hain, who pushed for the ban, says the lack of prosecution here in South Africa is no indication of innocence, only an indication of an overstretched justice system creaking under the weight of corruption to which Bain has contributed. But is it undermining our cause that, like so many cases, this one has not gone to court here?
I do think that it does harm the pursuit of accountability both here and elsewhere. And I think that it is indicative of a systemic problem in our law enforcement's ability to go after big corporations, but also with high level and often quite complex economic crimes. I think the points that is being made here is an important one, which is to say that, being placed on a blacklist for tenders, both in the UK and South Africa, is a welcome step, but it's really a tiny first step for accountability. What accountability would really look like is it would look like criminal investigations, both into the corporations, but particularly in the case of Bain, I think individual executives. And I think if you look at some of the business press coverage of this story elsewhere around the world today, there are lots of people increasingly saying, how do you change the calculus for how these types of corporations engage in this behavior? One of the key ways would be criminal accountability. And Bain, in many ways, offers an opportunity in that regard. There are very few instances in these types of crimes where you have the conduct laid bare to the extent that you have it here. You don't often have the type of evidence that you have here of the meetings, for example, the plans, your example of having written the tender. It's really strong evidence. And I think that the MPA and the Hawks, while talking very regularly about moving on these cases, there's no doubt that it's slow, but there's still time to do it. And I think what we should be grateful in this instance is that the failure of the UK or the UK taking a step back here,
All right, we're going to have to stop right there. Thank you very much, Dr. Iraj Abedian and Michael Marchant.